Hi team, welcome back to our Introduction to Ancient Rome Anchor Fact series of printables and mini lessons. In this series, we are learning about some of the most important events that explain the rise and fall of the Republic and Empire of Rome. In our earlier lessons, we looked at the birth and progress of the Roman Republic, including the creation of the consuls, the elected officials who replaced the King of Rome, the tribunes, the elected officials whose job it was to protect the rights of the commoners, and the laws of the 12 Tables, the constitution of ancient Rome. All of this contributed to the rise of Rome. And the good news is, the Romans were not done making progress. They still had problems to solve, and they continued to solve them to make the greatest version of Roman history. As we talked about in our Anchor Fact series of printables and mini lessons on Greece, which are available on the Knowable World website. And in our last lesson in this series, it was common in ancient cultures for poor people to become debt slaves. This was abolished in Athens by Solon, and the commoners rebelled against it in Rome, forcing their leaders to create tribunes. To make this issue clearer and prepare to learn more about Rome's progress, we need to learn two vocabulary words that will serve you well not only when you are learning Roman history, but whenever similar topics are discussed about modern America or any other culture. These vocabulary words are patrician and plebeian. The word patrician is the Roman version of the Greek word aristocrat. It comes from the Latin word pater, which means father. It literally means the son of a noble father. The patricians of Rome were the descendants of the original warriors who had fought to create and protect Rome. They were a special set of families whose names were the Junii, or gens Junia, named after the goddess Juno, and started by Lucius Junius Brutus, whom we saw in our History Through Art bonus lesson, and the Julii, or gens Julia, from which Julius Caesar became the most famous. Can you tell what months are named after these famous families? The word plebeian, or plebs for short, were commoners. Sometimes people still use that word to describe something or some idea that is common or usual, and therefore boring. In Rome, it was illegal for patricians and plebeians to marry, until a special law was passed called the Lex Canulia. In a once famous movie entitled Goodbye, Mr. Chips, the teacher made a joke about it. A patrician man tells a plebeian woman that he can't marry her, and she replies, "Yes, you can, you liar." Obviously, the most important thing about the law is that it made the citizens of Rome equal. It stopped them from being artificially divided into two groups or classes. This was also achieved by the later Licinian laws. These laws made it so that some conquered land from when Rome was at war was to be reserved for the plebeians. This would make it easier for them to grow food and not have to rely on debt from the patricians. The Licinian laws also said that the interest on borrowing from patricians should be reduced, which meant that the amount you would have to pay back when you borrow something, the interest, would be more manageable for the plebeians. Finally, the Licinian laws made it possible for plebeians to become consuls as well as tribunes. So a commoner could become, it did not mean he had to, but he could become the most powerful leader in the Roman Republic. This is something Americans believe in too. Any person in America can grow up to become the president. It doesn't mean that if you are poor, you will become the president, but it means you have the right to try, and that it's possible. But you may have noticed that I mentioned that the Licinian laws were partly about conquered land. This is an important point. Who were the Romans conquering land from? And what did they do with it? And the people they conquered? Unfortunately, this is where things started to go badly for Rome. In the next lesson, therefore, we will look at the story of how Rome began to become an empire. Sadly, this is where the story of Rome does go badly. Soon we will see wars, conquests, and slavery as the most important themes in Roman history. I wish it weren't so, but it is. See you next time.